Imagine waking up to headlines that simply say, "The dollar is no longer the world's dominant currency." At first, it doesn't sound like your problem. Your paycheck still arrives. Your local coffee shop is still open. Your debit card still works. So why would anyone care? Because the currency sitting in your wallet and the currency powering the global economy are not always the same thing. If the US dollar ever loses its position as the world's #1 reserve currency, the effects won't begin on Wall Street. They'll begin quietly. Inside banks, shipping contracts, government budgets, corporate loans. And by the time most people notice, the system underneath the global economy may already look very different. To understand why, we first need to understand what being #1 actually means. Most people imagine the dollar's dominance as some kind of political trophy. It's not. It's a network. Today, around the world, countries buy oil in dollars. Airlines pay for fuel in dollars. Shipping companies settle invoices in dollars. Governments borrow in dollars. Investors store wealth in dollar-denominated assets. Central banks collectively hold trillions of dollars in foreign exchange reserves because they expect other countries to accept them tomorrow, just as they do today. That's the important word. Tomorrow. The dollar's greatest advantage isn't that America says it's valuable. It's that almost everyone else believes everyone else will continue using it. Think about social media. A platform becomes valuable because everyone is already there. Leaving isn't impossible. It's just inconvenient. Money works in surprisingly similar ways. Now, imagine another currency slowly becoming more attractive. Not overnight. Over years. Perhaps more countries begin settling trade in Chinese yuan. European companies increasingly invoice one another in euros. Regional trading blocs create their own payment systems. Digital currencies become faster and cheaper for international transfers. None of these changes would destroy the dollar, but together, they could slowly reduce its importance. This process already has a name: de-dollarization. It's discussed constantly in headlines, but the headlines often make it sound much faster than reality. Replacing the world's reserve currency isn't like switching smartphones. It's closer to replacing every traffic light, highway, airport, and shipping port at the same time. The infrastructure matters more than the symbol. Right now, the United States offers something difficult to copy: huge financial markets, deep pools of investors, a legal system many global institutions trust, an enormous supply of Treasury bonds that investors treat almost like cash because they're highly liquid and relatively easy to trade. Liquidity sounds boring. It's anything but. Imagine owning a priceless painting. It's valuable, but selling it instantly is difficult. Now imagine owning a stack of $100 bills. You can spend them immediately. Liquidity is the difference. The dollar became dominant because the entire financial system learned to move around assets that could easily be bought and sold. If another currency wants the same role, it needs far more than economic strength. It needs decades of confidence. Now, suppose that confidence slowly shifts. What changes? Ironically, America wouldn't collapse overnight. Life would probably look surprisingly normal at first, but behind the scenes, borrowing could become more expensive. Why? Because global demand for US government debt might weaken. Today, foreign investors purchase enormous amounts of Treasury bonds. That demand helps the United States finance its spending at relatively lower borrowing costs. If fewer investors wanted those bonds, interest rates might need to rise to attract buyers. Higher borrowing costs don't stay inside government offices. Mortgage rates can rise. Business loans become more expensive. Car financing costs increase. Servicing the national debt becomes more costly. Small changes begin spreading everywhere. Then comes trade. If fewer international transactions use dollars, global demand for dollars gradually falls. That doesn't automatically mean the dollar crashes. Currencies rarely behave that dramatically without broader crises. Instead, exchange rates could become more volatile. International businesses would face greater uncertainty. Companies might hedge more aggressively against currency fluctuations. Global commerce becomes slightly more complicated. Not impossible, just less efficient. And efficiency is one of the invisible engines of economic growth. There's another consequence few people discuss: power. Today, the United States possesses extraordinary financial influence because the dollar sits at the center of international payments. Economic sanctions often work because access to dollar-based financial networks matters. Banks around the world clear transactions through systems connected to dollars. If international commerce gradually moves elsewhere, that influence could slowly weaken, not disappear, shrink. That's an important distinction. This is why debates about reserve currencies are never just about economics. They're also about geopolitics. But here's where the story becomes unexpectedly complicated. Many countries publicly discuss reducing dependence on the dollar. Some have already increased trade using local currencies. China continues promoting the yuan internationally. The European Union wants a stronger international role for the euro. BRICS nations frequently explore alternative payment arrangements. Yet, despite all the headlines, the dollar still dominates much of global finance. Why? Because changing habits is difficult. Changing global infrastructure is even harder. Banks prefer systems they know. Investors prefer markets with deep liquidity. Businesses prefer predictability over experimentation. The existing network keeps reinforcing itself. It's the same reason people often keep using software everyone complains about. Switching costs more than staying. Could that eventually change? Absolutely. History reminds us that no reserve currency lasts forever. The Dutch guilder once dominated global trade. Then came the British pound. Eventually, the dollar replaced it after decades of economic and geopolitical change. Notice the word decades, not weeks, not months. Reserve currency transitions are usually slow, messy, and often invisible until people look back years later. Perhaps the future won't belong to one currency at all. Maybe trade becomes divided among dollars, euros, yuan, and digital payment systems operating side by side. Instead of one financial superhighway, the world could build several. That future may prove more resilient, or it may prove more fragmented. Nobody knows. Which brings us back to the uncomfortable question. What happens if the US dollar stops being number one? Probably not the dramatic collapse people imagine. No overnight financial apocalypse. No instant economic reset. Instead, something potentially more profound. A gradual shift in how the world's money moves, how governments borrow, how businesses trade, how power is distributed. And perhaps the most surprising part is this: the dollar's greatest strength has never been the paper it's printed on. It's the confidence that billions of people, thousands of banks, and hundreds of governments place in the system surrounding it. The day that confidence begins moving somewhere else may not make the loudest headlines, but it could quietly become one of the biggest financial turning points of the century.